guys, EJ here, back with another video, and today it's going to be my 31 days of horror update, days 17 through 23, so what I watched over the past week. And if you've been, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you know I've been tackling the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, at least the first 7 films, and so that's what I'm going to be talking about over these next few minutes. I'm going to make it short because I mean, everybody knows about the Nightmare films, and I'm just sort of going to wrap up the series. But I'll talk about each one, what I thought of them, and so on. So on day 17, of course, I watched the original, the great first film, written and directed, of course, by Wes Craven, from 1984. If you grew up a child in the 80s or early 90s even, you're very familiar with the song sung by the kids in this movie that of course starts out 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, and so on. Such an iconic sort of horror themed chant that's throughout the series. Of course, film takes place in Springfield, Ohio. It stars Helen Langenkamp, and of course Robert Englund as the iconic wisecracking Freddy Krueger with the hat and the red and sort of brown striped shirt, just the iconic images, and of course his famous glove with the razor blades for fingernails. Such an interesting character and such a very inventive and original idea for a horror film. This idea of basically a boogeyman who haunts your dreams and nightmares, and if you die in one of these nightmares, you die in real life. It's a very sort of real thing that I grew up sort of believing. That's why whenever I dream, it seems like for the longest time I would never like want to die in my dreams. Somehow always found a way to wake up before you die in a dream, if it's one of those type of dreams. So it plays on a great fear in all of us. Such a great movie in the way it contrasts reality and the dream world. Oftentimes you don't know which is which until Freddy pops up or something totally weird happens. Of course, this film starred the feature film debut of Johnny Depp. His amazing death scene is very iconic with the blood gushing out of the bed. Such an awesome scene. Yeah, Johnny Depp, one of his early film roles. Still love the original. I still think it's the best. And yeah, one of the great horror movies of the 80s. Okay, up next on day 18, I watched a Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2, Freddys Revenge from 1985. Don't really remember much about it, at least before I watched it again last week. I do like the opening scene with the bus, the school bus scene where Freddy's driving this, taking the school bus on like a joyride, and then it ends up in this sort of weird cabin, sort of dangling on this rock. This one's a little different. He sort of inhabits this young boy as part of young kid on Elm Street. Of course, the film takes place on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger, a former child murderer who killed about 20 kids, and the parents of the kids, after Freddy Krueger got off, was set free, found him and captured him, and of course burned him to death. But of course he returned to haunt the dreams of the kids of Elm Street. So a lot more about the basic mythology, if you like, of Freddy is revealed in this film. They sort of took that to sort of showed us that in the Freddy, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake from a couple years ago. Wasn't a fan of that film, to be honest. But yeah, the second one, it's not great, but it's definitely not the worst of the sequels. I can tell you any of the actors really. Robert Englund, of course, is the only one who really returns. The girl, redheaded girl who plays the girlfriend, she was pretty decent. But yeah, the guy, the young kid, he wasn't very convincing. Somebody said when I posted this that he has more makeup on than Freddy Krueger does in this film, something like that, or he has more eyeliner than his girlfriend. That's what he said, which I thought was very funny and very true, in fact. Okay, up next, day 19, yeah, October 19th, I watched a Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors from 1987. A lot of people I talked to, this along with another one I'll get to, is one of their favorite Nightmare on Elm Street films and one of the best sequels, and I definitely agree with it. It takes place at a mental hospital, has a great cast. Patricia Arquette is the sort of driving force behind this film. Larry Fishburne, Lawrence Fishburne plays a young nurse at this mental hospital, and Heather Langenkamp, I can't say her fucking name, returns in this film as well. Really good. It's a movie I really remember from my childhood because it's one of the films I saw when I first came to America back in like '87, I believe, and my we were visiting at the time. I was living in England, and my nephews, I mean my my cousins, showed me and my sister this movie, and I'd seen the first one obviously by then, but this is the one I really remember being really freaked out by when I was a kid when I first saw it, because I always remember the puppet scene where Freddy sort of turns himself into a puppet, and then he takes this boy who has this sleepwalking problem and sort of rips out all his like arteries and veins and uses those to sort of puppet him out to this window. Really gruesome, and I remember like there's a big sort of Freddy over the hospital, sort of dangling this boy out the window before he falls to his death. That's the scene I always remember watching when I first saw this film, and it was good to see it again. So yeah, this is definitely one of the best sequels in the franchise, and a lot of people I talked to said this is one of their favorites too. Okay, up next, yeah, where are we? 20th? Yeah, 17th. 20th, I saw Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master from 1988. This time the heroine is played by an actress called Lisa Wilcox. She plays Alice. She's the one who's sort of taken on Freddy in this film. Not a great sequel, but not too bad. About on par with the second one, I'd say. Pretty decent film. That's all I'm going to say about it. But I will say that on the 21st, Lisa Wilcox returns in the same role as Alice. Probably one of the only times that the heroine has returned in back-to-back films. And that's Nightmare on Elm Street 5 from 1989. The Dream Child, and this time she gets pregnant, and Freddy is basically after her baby. That's the whole gist of the movie. Pretty poor as far as plot goes. Yeah, but it's not the worst sequel, I'll say that. That's coming up. Okay, so yeah, the 22nd, I watched Freddys Dead, The Final Nightmare from 1991. Yeah, just a terrible film. Story was unbelievably stupid. Somehow involves Freddy Krueger's daughter, or the daughter of the mother or something like that. Alice Krueger. You find out that Freddy Krueger's mother was actually raped like hundreds of times when she was in some mental institution. She was some nun or a nurse in some mental hospital, and her spawn, after being raped all this time by these people, turned out to be Freddy Krueger. You find that out during the franchise. I forgot to mention that. But Freddy's Dead. And the worst thing is, on the poster that I posted on this online, it said they saved the best for last, and that's totally not the case. Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, has to be the worst Nightmare on Elm Street film, period. Okay, last in the franchise, the 23rd. I didn't include Freddy vs. Jason in this series. I wanted to just watch the original films or the remake. I don't want to watch the remake, and I don't even have the remake. So yeah, last night, I finished up with on the 23rd with Wes Craven's A New Nightmare from 1994. Really cool, really inventive. I love the fact that it's set in the real world and it uses Heather Langenkamp. She's playing herself. All the actors are playing themselves. Robert Englund actually plays himself, and you see him as Robert Englund in this film. So it's about, and Wes Craven plays himself. He's in this film. He's writing a new script for Freddy after the final film. the fans didn't want it to go away, so he's coming up with a new idea. And as he does this, he has his own nightmares. Um, Weird stuff starts happening. People start dying in the usual Freddy Krueger way. So I really liked it. Was sort of inside Hollywood type of horror film. I will say the special effects towards the end of the film were a little silly, I thought, in some places. But yeah, cool film. And I didn't really like the makeup effects, the new makeup effects on the actual Freddy. His face looks very different as far as the sort of traditional Freddy Krueger look. But still, cool film. It's a little more darker as well because Freddy is actually darker in this film. He's not as sort of jokey as he is in the first 6 films, and they made a point of that. That he's not really the fact that they made all these films. Freddy isn't just a movie character anymore. He's actually this sort of real entity that's sort of come back to life, which was sort of an interesting take, I thought. And this, along with the third one and the first one, seems to be the consensus, the 3 best in the franchise. And I totally agree. And I don't think it's an accident that all 3 of them were written by Wes Craven. Of course, he directed this and the first one. And Heather Langenkamp stars in all 3 of these. And all the other films she doesn't star in. But the 3 best Freddy movies she's in. And that pretty much says it all as far as this franchise goes. So that is my little update for 31 Days of Horror. A lot longer than I thought it would be. Again, make sure you check out the link in the description to see what I've been watching. And of course, go back. I'm sure the video is maybe on the side. You can see what other movies I watched for the month of October. So my next update will be the end of the month after Halloween. And I'll be tackling another big horror franchise that began in the began in the late 70s, but made famous in the 80s and 90s. So yeah, thank you for watching, and until next time, I'll see you.
Bond. James Bond.